Hey, 7th grade. So you guys were checking out the last lesson where we were talking about the Crusades. So we know there's a lot of war in the Middle Ages. So far we had talked about a lot of barbarian tribe versus barbarian tribe, kingdoms in Western Europe. But we just saw in the last lesson that there was this huge set of conflicts, set of wars that were religious wars between the Christians in Western Europe and then the Muslims in North Africa and the Middle East over the city of Jerusalem, which both religions consider a holy city. One of the, or I guess two of the things that we're going to talk about today that are major effects is one, feudalism, that system of trading land and protection in order for loyalty and service. That's going to start to erode or break apart because of the Crusades. And one of the reasons it does is because trade starts to increase after the Crusades. Okay, business is going to start to tick up. All right, when that happens, the people with all the land and the money and the power are going to lose some of that land and money and power because other people are going to be able to go make their own money. So we're going to check that out today. All right, so we're trying to figure out, hey, how did trade grow during the Middle Ages? Well, as you can see, there were lots of trading centers that popped up. Lots of towns and cities kind of in the middle of crossroads and trade routes or kind of seaports along the ocean became centers and hubs for trade. The people coming back from the Middle Ages, coming back from the Crusades were bringing back with them all kinds of new products, all kinds of new ideas that they got from trading with the Muslims. And when they did that, the people in Europe said, whoa, these are really cool products. These are really cool ideas. We want more of these. And so the people kept going back to the Middle East to trade. So here we have the Crusades, right? We have some people, some Christians on this side talking to Muslims on this side. They are going to start trading ideas and goods with each other. Now, folks, I know if you're somebody who likes to fill in the notes as we go, fill in the blanks, feel free to pause the video at any point so you can write stuff down, because I know I tend to talk fast. But we see lots of ports and cities like Venice that were right on the sea, right on the ocean, start to pop up, and people start doing a lot of trading there. Because remember, people after the Crusades, they want this new stuff that's coming back from the Middle East. They want it, so they start doing a lot of trading. So Venice pops up. We start to see a lot of what are called fairs. Basically, these are big festivals, celebrations, where these merchants or these traders would come into town, coming from all over the world at this point, bringing new goods to Europe. And they're basically saying, hey, we'll give you this new stuff, this stuff that you've never seen before, you can't get or you can't make around here. You give us your farm goods, your food, your clothing, your weapons, tools, whatever. You trade your stuff to us, and we will trade it back. Okay? And so people start to trade at these big festivals, big fairs that would happen once a year. Now, this is really good for merchants and business owners because they can trade and get stuff that they can't make themselves. And the nobles, obviously, they're not going to let this happen for free. Okay? The nobles start taxing on all these sales. So the nobles are going to be making some money on this too. All right, so this is connecting fairs and people and trading the whole way from England up in far Western Europe, out in the middle of the ocean, the whole way over to Egypt and the Middle East, and then eventually to Asia. Fairs would have looked like this: big carnival festival, people setting up booths, trading with these traveling merchants, bringing the stuff that they made at home or at their shops. There'd be dancing, entertainment, music, art. A lot of times, merchants started using precious metals to trade rather than bartering, because sometimes, depending on what you're trading, it's hard to know if you're getting a good deal or if you're getting ripped off. But if everybody starts using the same stuff to trade, like gold, silver, those kind of things, it's easier to know if you're getting a good deal. Okay, because they started using this precious metals, they start using coins again, and then banking starts to come around. Okay, as a result of these fairs, so banks and that kind of business start to pop up. All right. There was a lot of overland trade going on, so people traveling in these big packs with horses, donkeys, whatever, along the land to go to the Middle East and Asia to trade. They needed protection, so they would often hire soldiers to protect them on these routes. But they also would stop at the fairs along the way, so they'd stop at town to town to town as they went trading. They would eventually kind of get tired of moving around and realize, hey, if we just kind of set up shop in these towns along the trade routes, we can kind of stay in one spot, have a little more stability, a little more protection, and people will come to us. We can set up a trade post in these port cities along the water or along where these roads all meet. Oftentimes, these merchants try to settle near castles or burgs so they could get some protection from the local lords. And eventually, lots of towns grew up as these business centers because of it. Okay? So the merchants are settling near castles because the nobles and the armies were there so they could protect them. Obviously, they're going to have to pay the nobles and the army a little bit for that protection. The kings and the nobles are going to allow the trading. They're going to allow the fairs. They're going to allow people to make their own money because the kings and the nobles can tax them. They can get a little piece of the pie without doing any of the work. All right, so that's going to lead us to communes and charters. Communes, these are political groups, basically groups that eventually formed local governments. Some of the townspeople, as they started getting their own money, as they started trading, running their own business, they started to get a little more influence, get a little more sway. And they want to start running their own affairs. They want more power and influence. The kings realizing that, hey, we're kind of outnumbered. There's more peasants, there's more shopkeepers, there's more townspeople than there are us. We got to kind of keep them happy. So they start striking deals. Some of the kings and the nobles said, you know what? We will give you charters. We will let you choose and make some of your rules. You still answer to us. We're still in charge. But we'll let you handle some of your own affairs. Let you make some of your own decisions. A lot of the communes, these political groups, they're the ones writing these charters. So charters often allowed people to collect their own taxes, to pay for different things, the upkeep of the town, different officials that they would elect to kind of run things and make laws. They could hire constables or sheriffs or whatnot to enforce some laws in the town, and that would allow them to punish people who committed crimes. And the kings typically were good with all this because they were still in charge. And again, they're taxing everything. So they're making some money off of this. And it's taking some of the responsibility off their plates. All right. So the people are going to become more politically active. And these towns are going to get some independence. But they're also going to become more economically independent. Merchants, artisans, workers, these tradespeople who are trading and making stuff, buying, selling, they're going to form guilds. Guilds are business groups. Groups that are basically around to make sure that everybody in those types of businesses are treated fairly. So there were guilds for all types of businesses. Carpenters who made things out of wood, shoemakers, blacksmiths who made things out of metal, masons who would build things, tailors who made clothing, weavers who made cloth, jewelry makers. Any business you could think of in the Middle Ages, they had guilds for them. And basically anybody who was in that town, who was in that business, was part of that guild. And the guilds were there to make sure that everybody was treated fairly. So I'll give you a couple examples here. Some other ones they also had for women were laundresses, people who did laundry, seamstresses who would sew and mend clothing, maidservants who worked as domestic servants in homes. They all had their own trade groups as well. And guilds, they kind of ran and regulated the businesses in the town. Now, one of the rules was businesses were not allowed to compete or advertise against each other. They wanted every business to have a fair shot at succeeding. And if one business didn't have as much money to advertise, well, the people in the Middle Ages, they didn't think that was fair. Okay, so they said, well, let's not let anybody advertise. Okay. Another thing to remember, these towns are very small. So if there's another tailor, let's say making clothes in the town, they're probably your friend. You probably know them. That or they are a family member. They're somehow related. So you want to see them do well. You want to see them have a successful business, just like you want to have a successful business. So you don't always want to run the other businesses out of town. I know that's kind of foreign to us because we see advertisements everywhere, and we have kind of cutthroat capitalism. You know, you make your money however you can. Don't worry about other people. They had a very different culture, way of thinking things back then. All right, so guild members were also required to work the same number of hours for the same amount of money. Wages and hours were also set. So you couldn't work extra to earn extra. You couldn't get paid more than other people. And that was to make things fair. Now, from the modern perspective, you might say, well, that doesn't seem fair. If they work harder or they work more, they should get paid more money, right? Or you might argue, well, if they're working less hard or making things that aren't as good, shouldn't they get paid less, right? Wouldn't that be the fair thing to do? Here's the thing. They didn't take this lightly. If somebody was in the town making poor goods that were not good, they were crappy, or they were trying to cheat people, or they were trying to be lazy, they were often kicked out of the guild. Okay? If they're kicked out of the guild, they're not allowed to do business in that town, not allowed to work there anymore, which is essentially like getting kicked out of the town. Because if your town gets a reputation for making crappy stuff, no one's going to come to your town to buy stuff. So if one business starts cheating people or making garbage products, the other businesses are going to take offense to it. They're going to get on their case, okay? And they're going to punish them because they don't want the town to get a bad reputation. So they're going to stay on people, make sure that they're working hard. Okay? Now, folks, remember, a lot of these other businesses, they're your friends. They're your family members because these towns are very small. They're not like big cities like today. And so you want the other guilds, the other businesses in the guild to do well because you know those people. All right, now, folks, there are 3 steps in being a guild member. First is you become an apprentice. So if you wanted to own your own business, you first had to be an apprentice. That means you worked for 7 years learning a skill, and you were a trainee, and you worked for free. You did not get paid for 7 years. After that, you could become a journeyman. Journeymen, they did get paid, still being trained a little bit by a master. They work for a master, getting paid, but they can't own their own business yet. And once you worked, I believe it's for another 7 years. I don't think I have it on there, but I believe it was for another 7 years. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Journeymen had to pass a test or create a masterpiece. Let's say they're a furniture maker. They would have to make a table or a chair or something that was absolutely beautiful to prove that they had mastered the craft, that they learned all the skills. Then they were allowed to become a master or own their own business, at which point they could take on their own apprentices and train people. But it took a long time. Okay? It took a long time. All right, so we will talk about the downfall of the guilds later. Okay? For right now, I want to show you real quick what you're up to. There's on ClassKick. There are paper versions of this. You might have got a paper version. Basically, this is a set of rules from a guild in London in the Middle Ages. Hatters Guild. They make hats. This is a set of rules that they came up for operating a business making hats in London. So you might have gotten a paper that looks like that. If not, it's on ClassKick. Check Canvas for it. On the next slide is a set of questions. Kind of go back to the rules on the other page, find the information, fill in, and you'll learn a little bit about, hey, what were their rules like? Okay, how did they govern themselves and run business in the Middle Ages? Check those out. Once it's done, just put the little hands up sign that'll tell me that I need to go check it. Okay, if you have questions about where to find this, okay, this is what I'm grading for points, let me know, send it to me in an email, I'll help you out. All right, folks, take it easy.